The wardrobes I've looked into in Paris for elegant after 60 hold fewer trousers than people expect. 5 pairs, usually. 4 if one of them is at the tailor. They aren't arranged by color, and they aren't arranged by outfit. They're arranged in the order they'll be needed, which is a different logic altogether. And it's a logic set by the weather rather than by taste. This is what a real autumn capsule wardrobe looks like. Not a mood board, not a seasonal collection. Just 5 trousers, chosen by someone who has been paying attention. Autumn in France doesn't arrive on a date. It arrives in stages. Each stage lasts about a week, and each one asks for a different weight of cloth. A woman who has dressed through 60 of these autumns knows the stages the way a gardener knows them. She isn't choosing an outfit in the morning. She's answering a question the window has already asked. So this is the sequence. 5 trousers, in the order they come out of the wardrobe, from the first week of September to the last week of November. The first week of September is still warm. 20 degrees Celsius by midday, sometimes more, and the light is long and yellow and does most of the work for you. This is the week for a pale trouser in cotton gabardine. Gabardine is a tight cotton twill, woven densely enough that it holds a crease and doesn't cling to the leg when the afternoon warms up. It's the cloth that makes a summer weight trouser look like a proper one. The colors are cream and stone and bone, or oatmeal, if there's a darker knit going over the top. The cut is straight through the leg, not wide, and this is the part most people get wrong. A wide leg in a light cloth reads as summer, and by September summer is over, regardless of the temperature. Straight reads as transition. The hem sits at the top of the shoe, not on it, and not above the ankle. There's a version of the pale trouser that's cropped short and worn with a bare foot in a loafer, and it's a perfectly good look in July. In September, it's a woman who hasn't noticed the season change. What she's doing here isn't clinging to summer. She's using the last week. The pale trouser is honest. After the middle of September, the light goes flat, and pale cloth starts to look chalky against it, and the trouser goes back into the wardrobe until April. That's the whole point of wearing it now. It has 1 week left, and she takes it. Then comes the morning that's cold at 8 and warm at 2. This is the hardest week of the French autumn, and it's the one most wardrobes fail. 12 degrees Celsius when you leave the house, 22 when you're walking back from lunch, say from a brasserie somewhere in the 6th, and nothing you can do about it except wear a cloth that doesn't mind either. That cloth is wool crepe. Wool crepe is made from tightly twisted yarn, which gives it a faint grain you can feel with a thumb, and a slight springiness that most wool doesn't have. It breathes in a way flannel can't, and it doesn't hold the crease across the lap when you've been sitting for 2 hours. You can wear it in a warm room without regretting it. Navy or charcoal. And this is where the dark trouser enters the season and doesn't leave. The cut opens up here, slightly fuller through the thigh, falling straight or with a small taper. The extra room is doing something practical, which is letting air move, but it also changes the line. And a fuller leg in a dark cloth is the most flattering trouser shape there is for a woman over 60. It lengthens without tightening. There's nothing clever about it. It's just what happens when a heavier cloth is allowed to hang. The mistake in this week is layering upward instead of choosing cloth that handles both ends of the day. A woman adds a jacket at 8 and carries it from noon onward, and by 4, she's a person carrying a jacket. The wool crepe trouser means she never needed the extra layer. The rain comes in the 3rd week, usually somewhere in the middle of October, and it changes what the trouser has to survive rather than what it has to look like. Wet pavement ruins hems, and that is the practical fact underneath this stage. A trouser worn at the length that flatters in dry weather will drag through standing water on a Paris footpath, and once the hem has taken up water, it stays dark and heavy for the rest of the day. So the rain trouser is cut shorter, a centimeter, maybe 2, above where the others sit. Nobody looking at her will identify the difference, and everybody will notice she is not the woman with wet ankles. The cloth is dark denim, or a heavy cotton twill of the sort sometimes sold as moleskin. Rigid or mid-weight denim, deep indigo, nothing faded, and none of that whiskering across the front of the thigh that is meant to look like where somebody else did. A dark denim trouser with a clean surface stops being casual wear. It just becomes a dark trouser that happens to be made from denim, and that is the whole trick. Something in the vein of what Cezanne does with their straight-cut indigo, or the darker Comptoir de Cotonnier versions, is exactly the weight and finish to look for. And here is where I will say the thing about tailoring, because it belongs to this stage more than any other, and it is the least glamorous point in the whole sequence. Almost every trouser sold off a rack is hemmed for a woman 5 feet 7 inches tall, wearing a 2-inch heel, and almost nobody is that woman. The French habit is not buying better trousers. It is buying ordinary trousers and having the hem set for the shoes she actually wears, which is a small alteration, often under 20 euros, and which does more for the line of a leg than any amount of money spent on a label. I have seen wardrobes where 4 of the 5 pairs came from chain shops, and every one of them had been shortened. The trousers were not the investment. The hem was. By the end of October, the temperature stops swinging and simply sits low, and this is when the gray flannel comes out. Flannel is wool that's been woven and then brushed, raising a soft nap on the surface, which is the reason flannel looks matte and slightly blurred rather than sharp. It's warm without being thick, and it drapes instead of holding its shape, so it needs a cut with enough width to fall properly. A narrow flannel trouser fights its own cloth and comes out looking rumpled by lunch. Gray flannel is the most useful trouser a woman can own, and it's been that way since the 1950s, when it moved across from menswear and stayed. Mid-gray specifically. Charcoal is easy and slightly severe, and pale gray goes dull in November light, but a true mid gray sits under almost every color a knit comes in. A camel knit sits over it, and so does cream, and so does burgundy or forest or navy or black. It does what beige is supposed to do and never quite manages, which is disappear underneath the interesting part of the outfit. The thing about the flannel trousers in these wardrobes is how worn the good ones are. Not shabby. Worn the way a chair is worn. Shine at the back of the thigh, and a nap gone smooth where the bag strap sits. These are trousers bought 8 or 10 years ago and repaired more than once. Their age is perfectly legible, and nobody minds. The idea that an elegant woman replaces things every year doesn't hold up in front of an actual wardrobe. The last stage is November, and November in France is flat. Gray light from 10 until 4, nothing dramatic about it, just low and even and slightly damp. This is corduroy. Corduroy is a cut pile fabric, and the ridges running down it are called wales. The count matters more than anything else about it. A wide wale, the sort with thick ribs you could lay a finger between, reads as workwear and adds visible volume to the leg. A fine wale has ribs narrow enough that from 2 meters away, the cloth looks like velvet. That's the one. It carries the warmth of a heavy trouser with none of the bulk. Color does real work in this stage because the light isn't doing any. Chocolate and rust, aubergine, bottle green, or a deep petrol blue. These are colors that look almost black in a dim shop and then open up in daylight. And against a flat November sky, they hold their depth in a way navy doesn't. A woman in fine wale corduroy, the color of chestnut, is the most visible person on a gray street, and she hasn't worn a single bright thing. Then the season tips over into proper winter, and the corduroy stays in rotation, but stops being the answer on its own, and heavy wool comes down from wherever it's been kept since March. That's a different sequence with a different set of rules. 5 pairs, then. Cotton gabardine while the light is still warm, wool crepe for the days that swing, dark denim once the rain sets in, then gray flannel when the cold stops moving, and fine wale corduroy through the flat weeks of November. Each one has about a month of real usefulness, and the woman wearing them isn't building outfits so much as reading a calendar. Going back through these wardrobes, very little of it turns out to be about taste. The choices look refined from the outside. From the inside, they're closer to practical decisions made by someone who has been cold or wet or overheated on a train and who adjusted and then kept adjusting for 40 years until there was nothing left to adjust. If this is the kind of thing you want more of, subscribe to Elegant After 60. New videos twice a week on how French women actually dress after 60, from the wardrobe rather than the magazine. And tell me in the comments which of the 5 you already own, because I'd guess most of you have 3 of them and have never thought of them as a set.